Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk bugle. It's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I thought
button?
I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? Morning, Corey.
Howdy, Randy. It's 3 minutes afternoon, though, so it's good afternoon.
Well, I haven't slept enough lately. I mean, I've been out elk hunting for the last 6 days. I just got back Sunday night. Today's Tuesday morning. And all I've done is try to catch up on things. I'm going to have to go back to hunting and get some more sleep.
I hear you. Well, actually, that's where you're supposed to get good sleep, is at hunting camp.
Well, the archery season's early in the year. There's a lot of daylight.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'm now starting to think about why I like hunting in December.
I don't know, because then you're stuck in a tent for like 16 hours of darkness and got to figure out what to do with all your free time.
Well, I get more sleep in December than I do in August and September.
Very
That
true.
counts for anything. When you get to a certain age, Corey, you're going to start wanting more of that beauty rest.
Oh, I already do.
Okay.
I crave it.
Yeah. Well, I spent 5.5 days stomping the mountains of your home state.
You were in Grizzly country also, weren't you?
Oh my gosh. The number of grizzly attacks that have happened so far this year is crazy.
My wife sent me, when we were hunting down in New Mexico, my wife sent me a link from the local newspaper that somebody in the exact area where you were hunting had just been attacked by a grizzly. So I texted you to make sure that you hadn't.
Me.
Yeah, because you had said on, I think, a podcast or two ago that you had a premonition that you were going to be involved in a grizzly attack this year. So I thought, oh my goodness, Jennifer sent me a link and Randy said he was going to get attacked. This might not be a good thing if the stars align here.
It's just amazing how much grizzly activity happens on that Montana-Idaho border country.
Yep.
In July, there was a jogger, a lady, 48 years old, actually where you and I had elk hunted in 2015. She got attacked and killed in July. 48-year-old lady from Kansas was up there working for the summer. So they never could catch that bear. Well, the day you text me, because we'd climbed way up this mountain, where all the bugles in Idaho are at least 1,000 feet of elevation higher than where you are standing.
Guaranteed.
When you make that bugle. So we climb up high enough. I've got some pretty darn good cell reception. I can see the curvature of the earth from as high up as we are. So, and I get your text. But just before that, I'd got a text that over on the Montana side, a grizzly bear, a sow and a cub, the sow had broken into someone's kitchen.
Yeah.
Grabbed some food, like Yogi and Boo Boo, right? Steal the picnic basket. And they head out, the sow, she heads out with the food. And the homeowner, it didn't sound like shot it. I'd have shot that thing. As quick as that thing pokes its nose through my kitchen window, it's dead.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so Fish, Wildlife, and Parks comes and finds, Yogi and Boo Boo over there eating out of the picnic basket. And so they dispatch, the big one, Mama.
The problem, yeah.
And they catch the little one, which is now getting shipped to a zoo. Well, the big mama, through the genetic testing of the hair and everything from the lady who got eaten in July, they validated that this was that bear.
And that same bear had also attacked somebody in 2020, I think, in Idaho.
In Idaho.
Over at what, Teton Lake or something? Teton?
Yeah, Henry's Lake.
Yep, that's right.
And so I'm telling Michael all this stuff. I'm like, if you triangulate where all these
you're in the middle of it.
Attacks happen. We're like, we're right here, man. If you read the things of what you're not supposed to do when you're hunting in grizzly country, you're not supposed to stay in thick covered areas or creek bottoms. You're supposed to make noise. But I don't think the noise they want you to make is cow calls or lost calf calls or stuff like that. So Michael and I, he's my camera guy, we get way up on Gobbler's Knob there, and there is bear sign everywhere. I'm like, what are we doing in here? This is not good. And Michael, I was reading your text to him, and he's like, man, I don't know. You think we should be up here? I'm like, well, we probably shouldn't be, but we're here, and we heard a bugle, so we're going to find it.
You did hear a bugle?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
That day, that bull, that was the one day where we were on an active bull. But you know the old saying of never try to catch an elk going up a hill?
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Oh, yeah. They can go uphill a lot faster than we can.
Yeah, so it tops out at 9,000 feet where this guy was going, and I don't know where he stopped. But 4 of his cows stopped along the way, and we bumped 2 of them. And I got tired. I told Michael, I said, you know what, my liver is flaring up here. I'm about ready to fold up on you. You'll just have to bury me up here. I got to take a nap. So I put my puffy coat on. I go and lay out in the sun, and Michael's tucked into some brush there, and I'm like in a 4th nightmare or something. And I don't know how long I've been sleeping, but it's a pretty long time because now it's like 2 in the afternoon, and I hear Randy, and I kind of sit up, rub the sleep out of my eyes. I'm like, what? And he's like, didn't you hear that? I'm like, what do you mean? He said that a cow and a calf came right up here and almost tried to sniff us, and I couldn't get you woke up. I'm like, well, I wasn't going to shoot a spotted calf. He's like, it didn't have any spots on it. But I wouldn't, well, we're trying to figure out when are we going to get a wind to go after where we thought this bull went to, because by now what he did is he ran around the mountain enough. So we hear him right at daylight. I'm like, oh man, he's way up there, but he is really making a lot of noise. He wants to get shot. Let's go. Heck with it. What else are we going to do for the next 4 hours? We're going to climb this northwest facing slope here with all this blowdown and timber. So you get all excited, right? Because you got the downhill thermal in your face. Yeah. You're like just putting the wheels to it. Boy, 4-wheel drive, trekking poles, everything. You're just going because you know that thermal's going to change. Well, we didn't get up there fast enough. By the time we got to where he had been making most of his noise, we were starting to get that swirling effect. And then we hear the last bugle we heard from him. We're like, okay, he's up into that little crevice there. That little, like a valley comes down, looks like a little wine glass. I'm like, all right, we got to get up in there. By the time we got up in there, we had a full-blown uphill thermal. And I'm sure he smelled us. And he probably laughed. He's like, you know what? Every time I go on that lower bench and bugle, someone comes up here thinking they're going to get up here before the thermals change. And I just stand up here and wait for them. And once the thermal changes, I know exactly where they're at. So I just went somewhere else. I don't know. I have any idea where he went. I called until my lungs hurt trying to get him to respond.
Well, if you're at 9,000 feet, it probably didn't take too long to get your lungs hurting.
No, we didn't quite get to the 9,000 foot
gotcha.
level.
That's where he was at.
Yeah, well, the timber line kind of on that face stops at about 8,600. The peak itself is 9,000. So that guy, that bull, I never got a glimpse of him, but I'm convinced he's probably a 10 or 12-year-old bull.
Oh, he's got to be.
And hunting season, hunting season for him is entertainment.
Yeah.
And Michael, we drove in this old logging road. He's like, it doesn't look like anybody's been down this road all season. I'm like, no, it doesn't look like it. That's just the place we want to go. Well, that's where that bull and those 4 cows were, and it's this is great. Everyone thinks that when we're producing video that we got it all figured out, that the elk just cooperate and whatever. I when I was taking my nap, once we finally got up there and I gave up on the wind direction, I fell asleep kind of laughing at myself. I'm like, you know how stupid this probably looks to the audience? Here's Newberg thinking he can catch up to this bull that's moving uphill through this kind of debris and blow down and brush. And, it's not necessarily the amount of elevation that can wipe you out. It's how quickly you got to climb. The steepness of that. And, I'm one of those confident guys. When I leave the truck, I've got everything with me that I'm going to need to pack that elk out. I got game bags and knives and extra headlamps, and we're going to have to film this piece and that piece. Got to talk about how to get an elk out in hot weather. I'm running up that hill with about a 30-pound pack, and I shouldn't say running. I'm stumbling up and down that hill. Oh, well.
So
that was just one of the days.
I was going to say, did you see any elk?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Did you hear any other bugles?
Yeah. Oh, the first day we climb right up near this 9,000-foot peak. And, people know I was hunting on the Montana-Idaho border. And here was my theory on that is if they bugle on the Montana side, I got a tag for that. And if they bugle on Montana or Idaho side, I got a tag for that. I can shoot 5 grouse in Idaho and 3 in Montana. This is a hell of a deal for me. And
5 in Idaho? Wasn't it 4?
Yeah. No, it's 5. I looked it up.
Oh, they must give you more over there. In our area, it's 4. They have it broken into regions in the state. So.
Oh. No, yeah, man. Not that I ever shot 5, but
I was going to say I got going over there.
I got 3. I got 3 one day. That was my. But anyhow, the first morning, I'm like, okay, it's been Labor Day. There's been ATVs. There's been so much pressure here. They have moved the elk way up high. There aren't going to be any elk down low. So we go up high, and like my first series of cow calls over in the Montana side, I get a bull that is just ripping it. I'm like, why did we get up here so quick? We hustled up here and we still have a bit of a downhill thermal and we're above him. So we scoot to try get away from, if he's going to come up here in bed, we don't want a downhill thermal coming to him. So we kind of head south and get on his elevation. And I do a few more cow calls through my bugle tube. And now I have 3 bulls bugling.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I'm like, man, I've really improved my calling over the last couple of years. I mean, holy cow. Now it's like 9 o'clock, and that bull is working his way up the hill. And he's still got the downhill thermal. And I told Michael, we're just going to let it. We're going to let him rest, get to his bedding spot. We're going to get to his elevation, and we're just going to side hill in there, and we're going to be done. I don't even know how we're going to get an episode out of this. We're going to be done so quick. Well, he climbed up the hill, and we never did see him. He was coming through a really thick timbered drainage, just one over from us, and we could just hear him getting closer and higher in elevation. And he just kept on going into Idaho, down over the other side. I have no idea where he went. He never stopped. Wow. I know it wasn't a hunter. There is not a hunter in North America who could climb that steep slope through that timber bugling that much. So I told Michael, I said, well, this other bull over here that got fired up from all this talking back and forth, we'll just go kill him. So we went out there on that point. I have no idea where that bull went to.
Sounds like you're chasing Houdini elk. They just all disappeared on you.
If I didn't have a camera guy there to verify my bad hearing, I would have thought that I was making it all up. So, yeah. So the very first morning, I had 3 bulls bugling within, I think, my first series of calls.
Wow. Like, and what was the date? You were hunting early, so that was like, what, September?
Yeah, that was the first day of hunting, I think, was September 5th.
Wow.
And do you think we could get those bulls to respond once they shut up? Nope. And then the ATVs come up.
Really?
So I take it that in the ATV world over there on the Montana side, you kind of drink beer all night, you're a little hungover, and it's kind of cold, so you don't fire up your ATV till about 10 o'clock. But when you do, you make sure your 33 buddies in their ATVs, you're just driving
right
along
with you.
It looks like the Great Northern Railroad coming through there. It's like, holy cow.
So that's why all the elk were getting out of there.
Yeah.
They completely left the state, literally.
Yeah. So, anyhow. Kept hiking and hiking and hiking. Never could find those bulls again. That one, he just kept bugling. He might be in Oregon by now, still bugling. He was headed west. There was no hill, no road, no anything was slowing him down. And so then I just took the grouse hunting, and I shot 3 grouse and called it good for the day.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I heard elk, saw elk.
Shoot elk?
No.
Okay.
No, I got greedy. I screwed up.
Uh-oh. Are you going to tell us about that, or do we have to wait and watch that?
Well, no, you can. I'll tell you about it. So I got a question for you.
Okay.
When you hear elk bugle in the morning in the dark, so we park at the gate, we walk in 45 minutes before daylight, and there's a few elk bugling. I'm like, all right. And I'm marking where they're at on my map. Okay, we'll go to him. Well, very first one we go to, quick as the sun came up, it was like dead silent. I'm like, oh, these must be other hunters out here calling in the dark, just like I might do. But if they're calling in the dark, I'm not calling in the dark. I'm not going to let them know I'm there. I'm just going to let them advertise. So we go about a mile up this logging road, and we stop. I sit up, and I was doing some cow calls down lower through my tube, like just blowing them out there. And this guy responded. I'm like, oh, he likes cows. Good. No, I'll stick with that. So we get up there, get to this setup, and I soften it up. I don't use my tube. I just cow call. Nothing. Cow call. Nothing. Do this off and on for about 8-10 minutes. Nothing. I'm like, well, he must have moved off. And so I'm getting rambunctious at this point, right? I know there's bulls around here, and I know they respond to cow calls. So he must. I just got to go find where he's at. So I told Michael, come on, let's go. Go around this corner up here. The wind will be a little more to our favor. Come around the corner, and there's a raghorn standing there,
looking at you.
He's been listening, but he hadn't said anything. He was only 150 yards from where we had been set up. And I don't know if he was going to come in any further, or if he just said, well, I'm just going to stay here. I don't know, man. This trail gets a lot of use. This might be a hunter. I think these are the same dudes who were here opening day, even though I wasn't there opening day. So he takes off running after he sees us. I'm like, oh, man, I can't believe I screwed that up. So the question I kind of asked myself and asked Michael, I'm like, I wonder how much longer we would have had to stay there before he would have worked his way in that last, however far.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because we'd already been there probably 10 minutes. So had he just got there, Or had he been close and he came there, and for 8 of those 10 minutes, he just stood there and listened.
Yeah.
And said, I don't know. Because there was so much timber in this area. From where he was at, he couldn't see us. So I don't think, you know how a lot of times they come in silent and they just stand and they watch because it's a little more open. He was standing in some pretty thick stuff. It wasn't like he was standing and watching. I think he's standing and listening.
Yeah. Yep.
So that morning was day 4. And so screwed that one up.
What was the weather like?
Beautiful. Other than it rained every afternoon.
Oh, really?
Every afternoon. It was, I mean, you want to pack your rain gear. Or I did.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, for me, this time of year in September, I know it's, most of the places I elk hunt, it's going to be some sort of afternoon thunderstorm every other day. So I just have my rain gear stuffed in the bottom of my pack. So I don't have to retreat when a squall comes by.
Yeah.
So, but
cold in the mornings?
One morning it was 39. Most mornings it was in mid 40s.
So not getting any frost or anything.
No. So this same morning, I think I hear a cow calling out in the middle of nowhere there. So I stop and I set up, do a few lost calf chirps. All of a sudden I hear, I'm like, oh boy, get ready. Here comes a little bull calf. You can see the little knots on his head. And this guy's lost. He is just nonstop. And he walks away from us. I do he comes running back. And I told Michael, I said, oh, dang, I was hoping it was a yearling. It's a bull calf. Michael says, but it doesn't have any spots.
That was your one stipulation.
Right. Yeah. And we couldn't get rid of that thing. That thing wanted to follow us around like little Bo Peep has lost her sheep or something. And, but then finally, I think he realizes, hey, these are people. And he takes off kind of trotting, but the whole time doing his lost calf calls. Well, we follow him up the mountain, and he gets up there, and he finds the cows. Because when we get to the peak, this timbered knob, there are cows just like, come on, we're over here. I'm like, that's got to be hunters. I mean, I've never heard that much cow chatter in my life. So I told Michael, I said, let's just sit down here and see what happens. There's this water hole over here. It's an old logged area, so there's still a bunch of fur, but the open area is just food like you can't believe. And there are so many elk tracks. So we sit there. Sure enough, about 5 o'clock, the cows start working their way out of the timber from that ridge. And we couldn't make an approach on them because by the time this all happens, now it's noon. And they're still chirping up there, but they're above us, right? It's like a chocolate chip tip to it. Like, I mean,
they're at the very top.
You are not going to approach that without being smelled. So I told Michael, as quick as the sun goes behind that mountain, because there's a big peak off to our west, I said, I think those cows are going to come down here and they're going to drag that bull with him. And they did. They came down there, and I should have shot one of those cows.
You had a chance to?
I could have, when I saw where they were going, I could have snuck down there because we had a downhill thermal when the sun did go down, and they're out there just feeding, and I could see where they were heading. They were about 100 yards from us, and I had this line of timber. I could have just snuck down to that corner in the trail and waited on them. But I told Michael, I said, there's a bull. If there's cows this noisy, they've got to have multiple bulls with them. No bull showed up.
Really?
Those cows must be some of the orneriest women on the mountain. They've run off every bull. So after they feed down below us, and they smell us because now that you can hear kind of a quick pace as they're going through the timber when they got downwind from us. I told Michael, I said, let's get that bull up out of the bed. Let's get him going. So I start bugling. we get a response, but that thing is about a mile away. I mean, it's so faint. I'm like, is that just an echo, or is that what is that? And Michael's like, no, that's a bull. And then every time I'd bugle, he'd respond, but he was so far away. So I played that one wrong. I probably should have just, in retrospect, found a way to get those cows out of my way. So we're set up to the east and slightly downhill. The cows are to our west, and the bull is even further west of them. So the only way I'm going to close the distance on that bull is I'm going to have to blow those cows out of there.
Yeah.
And so screwed that one up. Got greedy. Then, I said I was going to shoot a cow, right?
Yeah.
If I got a chance. Well, I was so convinced that if you have a group of cow elk sitting on a ridgetop, chirping and mewing all afternoon to the point where you think it's a bunch of crazy hunters.
Yeah.
How does that not attract a bull on September, whatever day it was at the time, 8th or something, 9th? I don't know. So I could give you a full play-by-play of all the things I screwed up, Corey.
Well, how many times have you heard, you get a small bull and then there's a big bull bugling in the background, so you pass up that small bull because you're just certain you're going to get a shot at the big bull, and then you don't end up with either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The old bird in the hand, right?
Yep.
So the last tale of woe here, the next day we go up same road. And so there's so many people camped there. I am dumbfounded that nobody is walking this road. Other than they all brought their ATVs, so maybe they just say, since I brought my ATV, I gotta just hunt ATV trails. There were probably 70 or 80 camp rigs set up on our way into this spot.
Wow.
So we're getting up super early. We're showing up an hour before legal shooting light because we want to be the guy at the gate, right? And park there. And so we do that again the next day. And the elk are kind of getting with it again. And when we'd walked out the night before, when I screwed up, gotten greedy with those cows, we heard 4 different bulls bugling back in there. We're like, all right, they're here. We just cannot get the dang things to do what we need them to do. So we walk in the next morning, and we get to this corner where that raghorn had been standing that I just walked into. So we set up slightly downhill from where that is. I'm like, there's a little point that goes out here with some lodge poles. I wonder if that's where he's bedding out there. I do a couple cow calls, and you can hear this bull coming to us. I'm like, holy crap, we should have thought this through a little further because it's now 60 yards to the timber, and we got these 3 little trees. I should have went and stood by the edge of the timber before I called.
Never call in the wide open. You get pinned down.
Yeah.
Sounds like you and I learned a lot of the same lessons early this year.
I you know how the intro to our podcast is, and somebody called me on their cell phone.
Yeah.
I was going to call you and say, Corey,
what do I do?
I got this raghorn standing here at 60 yards. He's standing there on the edge of the trees, and he won't come in any further. What do I do? I thought about doing that just for humor, but I wanted to shoot him.
Yeah.
So he came in, and he instantly had us pinned because he was not bedded. I bet you he wasn't bedded 200 yards from where we set up for our first calling session. I mean, what's the odds of that, right? I'm thinking, because the night before we'd heard him down in this bottom. I thought, well, he's going to be down in there. He uses this point out here, but he wouldn't be bedded right now. Well, he wasn't even out on the end of that point. He was close to this opening. So I was thinking if we hear him, we could move this way or that way, get out of this opening, and not just hide behind these 3 lodge poles that are standing here. Well, he was there so quick. I'm like, man, I am really good at calling this year, boy. When I light it up, they're just boom right there. Well, he stands there and he looks at us. And he can't see us because these lodge poles they provide us enough cover that they're definitely, they're 30 foot tall lodge poles, limbs all the way to the bottom, and we're standing in front of him. But he stands there for a little while, and he looks, and he came in behind such thick brush. One, I'm not going to take a 60-yard frontal shot anyhow. I'm not going to take a 60-yard shot, let alone a 60-yard frontal shot. So he starts moving to our left, and he gets into another patch of trees. So I called again. I'm like, well, I don't like where I'm set up, but I want to see what he does. When I called again, he just walked straight away. So my idea that my calling was really slick, he kind of gave me the rump ride there, just like, nanner. Never heard from him again, never saw him again. I mean, this hunt is like a clinic of how things can go snare wire.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've ever set up and made a call where the first call of the morning, the bull was that close to me when I set up and called, and he instantly closed the gap. So, I mean, it's like...
No, I mean, it goes, whether it's your first call or your 100th call, when you call, you want to make sure that you're not out in the open, but also you want to make sure that when you set up to call that you're in a good setup, because you don't want a bull to come in and not give you a shot. A lot of times they come in like that, just so quick, and they're on a string. And when that happens, you don't want to be caught in a bad setup because you did everything right on the calling. You got the bull coming to you and coming in, and then he got there and you couldn't get a shot. So that's why I always say that the setup is where, the separation between success and failure really happens with archery hunting. It's almost always in the setup.
Yeah. And, this is, again, me being a little bit lazy, trying to hedge my bet. Walking out the night before, we'd heard a bull off each side of this trail. So I thought, if I stop in this little opening, whether it's the bull on the north side or the bull on the south side, they're going to hear me. Well, what I should have done is got into the brush somewhere on either the north side or the south
Pick
side.
a side.
Yeah, I thought, these bulls are going to, if I get a response, they're going to be 400 or 500 yards away. Anyhow, I got plenty of time. I didn't have enough time to hardly sneeze. And he was standing there looking at us.
He'd been waiting for you all night.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that I left that hunt pretty optimistic in a lot of ways. Everyone else we talked to was like, I haven't heard a bugle.
That's what it sounds like you've been hearing a lot of bugles.
Yeah, going back to e-scouting, how we use the elevation bands on the terrain analysis tool with the GoHunt maps. I had kind of e-scouted by elevation bands, because even though I knew the elk could be in what you're like this, they could be at the top of the mountain or they could be at the bottom out in the flats. Every elk that we encountered before we started chasing them to the top was somewhere between 7,200 and 7,700 feet. And I don't know what was going on at that elevation band, but that is where the cows were. There was something going on at whatever food.
I was just going to say, what was going on. That's where the food was.
Yeah. And I mean, when we hunted really high, like above 8,000 feet, the bugle that took us up to almost 9,000 feet, when we first heard him, he was at like 7,700 feet and took us 1,000 feet up the mountain before we wore out.
Yeah.
And so this is what intrigues me about archery elk hunting. I'm going to spend the rest of the year trying to figure out that riddle. Why were these elk? And I don't know if this happens in other places, but in this place, at least for my small sample set, every bugling bull I heard was within a certain elevation band.
Yeah.
And I was hunting an area where the lower country's in the 6,000 feet, the high country can go up to 10,000 feet. But if I got higher or lower, I didn't hear squat.
So was there more access down low?
Oh, down low, it's like a demolition derby down there. I mean, I wouldn't insure somebody on an ATV down low. I mean, the odds of getting in an ATV wreck there seem pretty good.
Really?
Based on my observation.
Man.
And, I mean, I get it, multiple use, open trails, whatever. Yeah. And there were a lot of people. Okay, in the footage, people are going to see me laughing, and they're going to be thinking, "What is Randy laughing about?" And I was laughing about some of our recent episodes where it's like, you ever hear the stops? I can't tell you how many times I heard that down below me, Corey. I'm like, okay, I get it. You own an ATV. That doesn't mean you got to hunt from it.
And if you choose to, that's great too. But yeah, like we said, at least let the radio shut off before you let out a bugle, because the elk can hear that. It's you pull up there on your ATV and it's and when it shuts off, the elk are going, okay, there was just an ATV there. And 3 seconds later, an elk bugles are like, wait a minute, an elk wouldn't bugle if an ATV was right on top of it. Give them a couple minutes to settle down and forget that ATV was right there, and then let out a bugle, and odds might go up a little bit. And
maybe that's part of the reason why, most of the ATV trails are in the lower country and in the foothill country. And maybe that's why those elk were just, 500 feet of vertical above where all the ATV activity was. Yeah. I'm not saying they're in sanctuary mode this time of year, but there was so much good food everywhere. You guys must plant elk food in Idaho.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember, other than the grasslands of central Montana, eastern Montana, I can't remember seeing as much forage on the landscape as I saw on this hunt.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's been a good year. Yeah.
And I can't, even with all that, I can't even get an arrow and a bull out.
But you did kill some grouse.
Oh, yeah.
Did you cook them at camp?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to share the exact recipe you use, or do I have to wait until after the podcast and then you'll tell me?
I don't even know if I'll tell you after the podcast.
Oh, man. I've got 5 grouse in the refrigerator I need to cook tonight for dinner, yeah.
All right. I might send you a package.
Well, you don't have to
send
me
there
anything.
before dinner tonight.
You don't have to send me anything, just an idea.
Yeah, I mean, all it takes a little extra, virgin olive oil. Get it hot enough that when you sprinkle the flour on there, it pops and sizzles. But olive oil has a lower burning point, so you don't want it to burn.
Yeah.
And you cut them into uniform pieces if you have to, so you don't have big breasts and little tenders, so that one gets really done and the other is raw.
Yep.
Whatever seasonings you want to put on it. A little lemon pepper, a little white pepper, a little cayenne.
I'm taking notes.
Little thyme, little basil. So, yeah. You guys got some weird rules about grouse in Idaho.
We do.
What in the hell is a maintained road, Corey?
Well,
because I didn't see a road there, a Forest Service road that was maintained at all.
Yeah.
I can see why a lot of people own an ATV, because the Forest Service road budget must be zero in Idaho.
Yep.
So your rule says that you cannot shoot a grouse on a road that is maintained by any agency.
Across the road, from the shoulder of a road, yes.
Or an embankment.
Yeah,
right.
But the catch there is a maintained road.
Right. What is a maintained road?
Well, I'm not sure. If it's not clearly defined there, I guess it'd be up to each user's discrimination.
Do you know how many limits of grouse I could have shot if I knew what a maintained road is?
You saw a lot of grouse on the edge of a gravel road?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, did you see anybody maintaining it?
No. I had to lock in all 4 and almost put it in low.
Well, then it probably wasn't a maintained road.
I don't know. When you're in my position, you don't take chances on interpretation. So, yeah. And it says with any weapon. So I couldn't even shoot him with my bow, even though I had my shotgun with me.
Well, here's another question that I don't know the answer to. Can you shoot grouse with a slingshot?
I don't know. I don't have a slingshot because I'm not good enough with one. But well, I tell you what, those Montec small game points.
G5, small game head.
Yeah, they got to work out.
They are good.
And I didn't even lose one of them. Sometimes these darn rough grouse, they fly off the trail and they land in a tree, like on a limb like 8 feet off. And so you end up, you don't have much of a backstop there. And your arrow goes into the far beyond out in the middle of the forest. Well, I wasn't doing that this time. I told Michael, I said, I'm going to wait for him to run uphill where they got a backdrop there. That way I know I'm not going to lose an arrow. Yeah, I made one of my finest shots ever. I'm so proud of the one grouse I shot, Corey. He's walking through the lodge poles, and you could hear him. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And I'm like, Michael, come on. Every time we'd get to a little opening, he'd cross it before we could get there. I'm like, all right. So I went way ahead of him, and I can hear him coming. It's kind of like a bull elk coming in, bugling. I'm so excited. I can hear him. I see this little head. And I got a window about as big around as a soup can there at about, 15, 16 yards. And I'm at full draw. And just as he sticks his head into that opening, I release and I pole-axed him. I was like, man. And Michael, he's like, holy crap, how'd you thread that through there? You got him. I'm like, I know I got him. Big old male rough grouse.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you seeing pretty much just ruffed grouse?
No, it's probably half and half. Obviously, when it got higher, saw blue grouse. Yeah. So, but I'm going back there next year just grouse hunting. I don't need an elk tag there.
Yeah.
Heck with that. I'm going back there grouse hunting.
Oh, you'll see his elk then.
Well, probably. I'll laugh at him. I'll say, hey, you're the guy who made me chase you all the way up the mountain that day. I was thinking about you and Donnie when Michael and I were doing that. I told Michael, I said, Corey told me this story about him and Donnie last year. This elk kept bugling up above them, up above them, up above them. They kept climbing and climbing and climbing. I'm like, I think this guy's related to that same elk. One last Idaho story, then we'll get to New Mexico. Because that's where you were, right?
I was, yeah.
So how big of a pile of bear poop does it take before it's grizzly versus black bear? Because we saw 2 black bears.
Yeah.
Brown-faced black bears.
Yeah.
The night we were coming off that mountain when we chased that one way up there at almost 9,000 feet, we're coming down. And we run into this really tight canyon. It's really the only way you can get down through there. And there are those mountain ash with those clusters of orange berries everywhere.
Yep.
And we stumble across a fresh, slimy pile of mountain ash berries that had come out the end of the south end of a north-headed bear of some sort. And I don't think there's a black bear big enough to have pooped a pile that big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like if you took the biggest cow pie you've ever seen and you stacked like 3 of them that size together, that's how big this pile of mountain ash berries was.
Yeah. And what's crazy is those berries come out without even being processed. Like they're still in the same form as when they went in. So it's like, why are they even eating them?
Right. What's he getting for nutrition out of there?
Nothing.
And I pointed to Michael. I'm like, I hit it with my trekking pole and it just like crumbled. It slimed apart. It wasn't dry enough that it had crust to it. I'm like, you think a black bear could poop a pile that big? And I was like, no. How far is it to the truck? I'm like, well, I think if we don't run into this bear, we'll be there before dark. Yeah, that was, but elk hunting, the fever of chasing a bugle, unfortunately, sometimes overtakes maybe good judgment. And so you expose yourself to a little more risk than a smarter person, probably.
Totally.
Someone not under the influence of bugling noises would have made a different decision. But anyhow, that's a report from Idaho. I can give case-by-case mistake all along the way. My Idaho elk tag is still in my pocket.
Well, there's still season left.
I had a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got to go to Idaho or go to Utah, then Kentucky, and then Canada. So I'm
gotcha.
So, how was New Mexico?
Well, we probably need to give a little bit of a backstory here because you were in on the collusion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I had an opportunity. I've got a friend that lives here by me that leases some land in New Mexico. And he had a couple tags, and he reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in buying a landowner tag. And this was in northern New Mexico, so it's just good for the private land. And I said, well, here's what I want to do. So I concocted a story that Randy and I collaborated on to let Donnie think that we were going to New Mexico to call elk for Randy. And so Donnie's thinking he's just going down there to be a caller and a packer, and Randy's got the tag. And the whole time, the tag's for Donnie. So I had to call Randy because when we went to Big Sky for the Total Archery Challenge, I knew that we'd all three be there together, and I wanted to make sure we had a story straight. So we kind of did. And so basically I told Donnie, hey, there's a lot of bear and turkey down there, and we can hunt bear, so bring your bow. And if Randy happens to get an elk early, then we'll go and we'll bear hunt. So that's how we got Donnie to bring his bow to New Mexico. We had this whole fabricated story there to pull this off. So we got down there, and John's videoing, and he came over to my tent, and I was kind of explaining, what we were doing there. And so then we went into the main tent where Donnie was, and I said, well, I've got good news and bad news. What do you want first? And Donnie said, well, I always want the bad news first. I said, well, Randy's not going to be able to make it down here to elk hunt. And he said, okay. And I said, the good news is I've got an elk tag here for you. And he was pretty excited, but he did admit that he had some suspicions about what was going on. And he said, I told my wife that either Randy's lying or Corey's lying, or they're both lying, because their stories aren't 100% matching up. And then he listened to a podcast, I guess, where we must have let the cat out that you were hunting Idaho the first week of September. So he started thinking, well, how's he going to be in New Mexico the first week of September if he's hunting Idaho? And then he thought, well, maybe he's just saying that to cover. So he's like, I was just all confused. But anyway, I told Donnie, this is my thank you for being a great friend and a great hunting partner. And, we've never bought a landowner tag, don't hunt private land. And so this was kind of out of the norm for us. But I thought, you know what, this is a one-time opportunity, or just an opportunity to tell Donnie thank you and be able to go and do something that maybe we wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
By day 7, I was wishing I was on public land with an over-the-counter tag hunting with Randy in Idaho. It was tough. It was early. It was hot. It was a full moon. There's just a lot going on. When we got there the first couple of days, the bulls were still in their summer pattern. We saw 4 mature bulls hanging out together on day 4 of the hunt. Yeah, like 300-inch mature bulls, like 6 points.
Wow.
And they walked right by a group of 5 cows and 3 spikes and didn't even turn their head to look at them. We couldn't get them to talk. Those 4 bulls wouldn't talk. They didn't care about anything other than just getting back to the bedding area and laying down. There were groups of 4 or 5 raghorns hanging together. We heard very, very few bugles. So it was, we had to revert back. I really thought that we would be hunting rutting elk, and a lot of elk, and that the property we were on would have a lot of elk. Well, it had summer bulls up high, and then once they left and started roaming looking for cows, all the cows were on neighboring properties that had big ponds, and so the bulls were leaving the property and going there. So, there's definitely some pros and cons to public land and private land, and where you're locked into just one piece of private land, you can stand there and look at 200 elk out in the field in front of you, and if it's not on your private land, it doesn't really matter if you're on public or private there. So, we'll go through, and we learned that it was going to be a tough hunt, and that's always frustrating. We camped at 10,000 feet. We hunted up to 12,000 feet.
Whoa.
We didn't really, only one night did we go below camp and hunt. So we spent 7 of the 8 days above 10,000 feet. So that alone, it takes a couple days to even acclimate to that. But even by day 8, you could still only go 20 yards up, straight up a hill at a time. And then you'd have to stop and catch your breath. And it was, physically, it was a very demanding hunt. We hiked 70 miles in 7.5 days. Like I said, at high elevation, and we did a lot of sitting. So we didn't go back to camp during the day once. Once we left before daylight, we didn't get back till after dark. And we found some really good water holes, and we just thought, as hot as it is, we've got, at least a chance of something coming in. And we did, but we never saw anything come in. The one place we sat, there were 3 water holes and wallows all kind of lined up in this little, a spring seep out of the mountain area. And we picked different ones to sit at each day. And whichever one we picked to sit at, we could hear elk come into the other one. But it was too noisy. We couldn't get up and go and look because it was just so steep and noisy that the second we'd have got up and tried moving, we'd have rolled rocks or done something. So we just had to listen to the elk come in and drink out of the other one and then move away. And we never even saw elk when we were sitting in water. But the one good thing that came out of sitting water is we would sit water from probably 9:30 until 5:30 every day. So we're talking 8 hours of just sitting. And I can't just sit. And we talked about it last year when Donnie and I tried sitting in Idaho hunting early season. And, you can get games on your phone. You can do a lot of things, but an hour of playing a game on the phone, it's like my eyeballs are ready to fall out of my head. I need to get up and move around. I started whittling.
Really?
Yeah. And it kept me busy for at least 4 or 5 days. Like I would just get a chunk of aspen. There were aspens everywhere there. So I just get a chunk of aspen and start carving on it. I carved a boat. Not like a full-size boat, but a boat with seats in it, and we actually put it in a water hole, and it had a rudder on it, and I glued the seats in. I glued the seats in using pitch from a pine tree, and it locked it in there. It's not, it doesn't just stay sticky and soft. Once it locks in, it becomes like glue. So I put it in the water hole, and there was a little trickle coming through the water hole, so it had a little bit of a current, and that thing stayed straight all the way through the water hole because of the rudder I carved in the bottom of it. Pretty good design. We left it in the water hole overnight to make sure that it was truly float-proof and water-worthy, and we came back the next day, and there was no water in it. It was still floating there in the water hole. So
that's what a mechanical engineer does when he's sitting in the blind.
I had to do something. Yeah. I carved a top, like a top that you spin. And you'd be amazed at how perfectly balanced a top has to be able to spin and stay upright. But I've got a top carved out of aspen wood that will spin for over a minute on a flat surface.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, it sounds like you might be expanding into new business enterprises.
No, because my wife said, "Do you enjoy doing that?" And I said, if I have nothing else to do and it keeps my brain and my hands occupied, yes. But if I have anything else to do, I'm going to choose something else to do. But I literally had nothing else to do. I whittled a shotgun shell. a full shotgun shell, including the primer. I carved a hole in the top and put pitch in it, and then carved a little primer and put it in there. I carved all the little vertical lines on the side of the shotgun shell, including down at the bottom where that all folds together there, carved all that. And I carved a duck.
Oh, now you're a decoy carver.
Yep. So, and the duck almost floats. It's
rolls upside down.
It's a little top heavy, yeah.
Yeah, put a little lead on the bottom for ballast. He'll sit upright.
Totally. But it looks more like one of those yellow rubber duckies that you would take a bath with when you were a little kid than an actual duck decoy.
So what was the end result of all this?
Nothing.
Oh.
Of all the carving or the sitting?
The sitting and the hunting.
Oh, the hunting. Well, we can go back to that. The most action we had was me carving and whittling at the water holes each day, but we didn't hear any bugling from camp, which we could basically see and hear the whole mountain from where we were. So I knew that, it wasn't just a matter of the full moon, because there was no bugling in the middle of the night until day 4. And we had a bull that bugled right when we got back to camp at night, and he bugled at least every half an hour through the night. And it was the most lonely, pathetic sounding bugle. This elk was so lonely that nobody was answering him. I mean, it was just, you could hear it and just, you could just imagine the puppy dog eyes that he had when he was bugling, trying to find a friend. So we named him Lonely Jim, and we got up the next morning and Lonely Jim was still in the same place. So we went down from camp into a little draw and set up and called, and he wouldn't come out of the trees. He was up in the aspens, probably 200 yards away. And we bugled back and forth for a good 45 minutes. And he started getting a little fired up, and I would chuckle once in a while, but still could not draw him down the hill. And I did everything. I tried lonely cow sounds. I tried estrus buzzes. I tried aggressive bugles, lonely bugles, chuckles, raking. Nothing worked. And he finally dropped over the backside of the ridge he was on, heading away from us. So that's when we started our chase up the mountain following an elk. But at 10,800 feet, it's a little harder to keep up with them.
Yeah.
So we finally did catch up to him and got on the same hillside. We came over a little ridge and bugled, and he was right there. And he bugled, and I challenged him once, and he came marching right in. But it was probably only the second time in 15 years of hunting with Donnie that I've got to witness him pass up an elk. And he doesn't pass up many elk, but he passed up Lonely Jim. Lonely Jim came by him at about 8 yards. And then Lonely Jim ended up on top of me at about 6 yards, looking right at me, and bugled. And then he'd realized something wasn't quite right. So he turned and trotted up the hill, and I bugled. And he turned and circled right back around to come and take a look at me. And he walked by Donnie and John at about 2 yards, maybe 3 yards. Yeah. Got a pass again. Donnie ended up passing up another 5-point a little bit later that morning that we got bugling. So we're thinking, all right, it's day 4. We've got 2 bulls bugling. It's turning on. Things are going to get good here. Mm-hmm. It didn't. It didn't get good. Day 6, we finally heard a mature bull bugle. First mature bull we heard bugle. And he was down in a draw, and we moved across, and I got him to bugle. He answered once. We moved in a little ways. I bugled. He answered again. And I thought, all right, we've got to get over to the top end of the draw, keep the wind good here. If we get down too low, it's going to pull down in the draw. Up high, it was still pulling up. And I went a little bit farther and looked down the hill about 60 yards and just saw a white of a rump of an elk as it whirled and ran off. So he was coming in pretty hard, and we ended up bumping him. I was leading the charge on that one and take full responsibility. Had we just set up and gotten a good setup, I think he would have come in. But we were so beaten up over not seeing or hearing any elk that we finally got one to bugle. And I thought, we've got to get in close to him and make something happen. And he was probably thinking the same thing. He hadn't heard any elk bugle. Now he heard one. He was coming in to see what was going on. But that was morning of day 6. We didn't hear anything else, see anything else the rest of the day. The next morning we went to the top of the mountain and we're glassing up on the shale rock above timberline. And there were 4 bulls, just little raghorns feeding across up there. And I was just back behind Donnie and John, probably 8 yards or so. And I could see just a little sliver of the opening and saw a couple of them go through it. And I thought, well, we'll see what they do. They were a good, 500 yards away. So I cow called a little bit and bugled, and John turned around. He's like, hey, they stopped. They're looking our direction. So I gave him a couple more cow calls and a bugle. And all I heard was John say, they're coming at us at a dead run. So all 4 of the bulls were running straight down the hill to us. And I moved back to keep calling and ended up calling the smallest little raghorn in to about 10 yards from Donnie and John before it crashed down the hill. And we thought, well, we'll go up on the very top of the ridge where they were. Maybe there's something up there we don't know about. So we climbed all the way up to the top. We were at about, 11,600 feet or so. And did a little bit of cow calling. You could hear branches breaking down off the backside. So again, I climbed back behind and where I could look off the side we had come up on, and John and Donnie set up on the backside of the mountain there. I ended up calling in that same 4-point. I don't know how he beat us up the mountain and around the mountain and then came back in from the other side, but I ended up calling the same 4-point back into to John and Donnie at about 20 yards. But while I was over on the backside of the hill, I heard a big bull growl down in the bottom and got the binoculars out and spotted a really nice herd bull with some cows that he was pushing around. And we were, a good mile above him there, but could hear him glunking from that far away as he was pushing cows. So I thought, all right, there's a bull that's rutting. We've got to get down on him. And it's probably 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30 at this time. So by the time we got down, dropped down into the bottom, came back up to where the bull was, it was probably close to 11. And he was no longer there. But there was a hillside across from us, a north-facing hillside that had a big aspen flat. And I said, I bet that's where that bull went to bed. So we sat there and called and called and called. And pretty soon over on that ridge, a bull bugled, but it wasn't the same one. It was just a wimpy little bugle. And we kept calling, and it's probably 11:30, and we finally hear a from that aspen patch. And I said, whoa, it's not very often that a bull bugles in the middle of the day and lives to see the sunset that night. So we got really excited, and the wind was kind of, it was good on the open hillsides. It was pulling up, but you get in some of those little shaded draws and it was still going down, which was causing some swirling back and forth. And we started moving in and got into some swirling winds. So we sat down for a while until it calmed down, and we got over, and we'd marked on the phone where we thought that the 2 different bulls were bedded, and the one was up a little higher. And I thought, well, we've got to go in above him because we don't want to go in between them and mess them both up. So we'll start off with the first one and then move down. And we got right in, and we're peeking over the edge of this little ridge. And I thought, we've got to be right on top of them here. And so we set up, and I cow called a couple times and bugled, and all of a sudden the big gust of wind came right up from above us and behind us and blew straight down the hill. And I could see John up ahead of me just shake his head. He knew what was going on, and so we kind of regrouped. And I'm like, well, anything below us smelled us, and I'm sure that they were bedded right on this flat down below us. So I pulled out my phone and was looking at the map and realized there was a little draw that came up that was in between where the flat was, where we thought the elk were. And I said, I think we might have been okay if the wind went down. It might have just pulled down that draw and not got up on the ridge next to it. I think we need to continue on a little bit. So we went another 100 yards and cow called, and right over to our left, right on the ridge, a bull bugled. And we set up, and I think he bugled 4 times on his way in. And while he was bugling, down below us on the aspen flat, we could hear, So this first bull comes in to 20 yards, and Donnie comes to full draw, and then he turns around and looks at John like, should I shoot or should I wait for the big one that's down below? And let's just put it this way. We packed an elk off that hillside not too long after that. So Donnie passed up 3 bulls in New Mexico and shot a really nice bull there in the middle of the day. I think it was 1:30 when we got in there and he shot the bull. It was the only bugles we heard after 8 o'clock in the morning the entire time we were there, including the evening. We didn't hear any bugles in the evening from 8:30 until dark. Every single day we didn't hear a bugle other than that last afternoon when Donnie shot his bull.
Wow. Whew. Boy, I'm glad that we made up a bad lie. We're not very good liars, but I'm really glad that Donnie was the one who had to hunt that hard.
I know. That's what I was thinking, man. If Randy really had come down here, I'd have felt pretty guilty, dragging him down to New Mexico and building this hunt up and then having it be his. And it was, I think, there are good bulls down in that area. We did see a couple nice bulls, either on neighboring properties or way down low. There were, I wouldn't say a lot of elk, but there was sufficient elk in the area, but it was just so hot and so early that they weren't with the cows hardly at all yet. I really think it turned on the day after we left. They killed 2 elk over on the other side of the same ranch. So it sounds like it turned on there, but man, that early season's tough. It's just tough hunting.
Yeah. Good for Donnie.
Yeah.
Well, one of the videos we planned to shoot while we were out in Idaho. So before we go out in the field, we have all this planning sessions. We call them hub content videos that we're going to film as part of the deal. And one of the videos that the crew is like, all right, Randy, you don't believe in this moon phase theory. When you're out there, once you kill your elk, you need to do a video about dispelling or blowing the myth of the moon phase. Well, after 6 days of stomping around, and I heard some bugles, but it wasn't like you would hear, September 23rd or something.
Yeah.
My ability to do a video to dispel the moon phase theory, I didn't feel comfortable.
You lost a little confidence in that, huh?
Yeah. So,
I think moon phase does play a role. I think you have to change things up a little bit. I think elk can be killed in any moon phase, but when you couple moon phase with early season and with hot dry temperatures, I think that combination is really, really tough.
Yeah. Unless you have a thermal sight on your bow and you're allowed to hunt the hours of darkness, which I don't know of any state where you're allowed to do that.
Not for elk.
Yeah. You're not going to have a lot of daytime activity. Yep. I guess that's the point. It was really interesting for us that as quick as the sun cleared the main mountain range, so been legal shooting light for maybe an hour, it was like dead.
Yeah.
Like, and you would hear nothing other than that one group of cows. I heard more cows in the middle of the day than I don't think I heard a bugle after 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then at night, the sun would have to be pretty much all the way down,
which gives you about a 30-minute window there, and then it's dark. And
yep. So, yeah.
So what really surprised me was how many miles we hiked. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a big ranch that we were hunting. I think we had about 4,000 acres total, but we only hunted about 1,800 to 2,000 of it, just the upper part of the mountain. So it wasn't a big area, but there wasn't an aspen tree that didn't know us by the end of the hunt, I don't think, because hike 70 miles in that limited area.
Yeah.
But we didn't jump a single elk during the day. Like,
wow.
In all of our hiking, we didn't bump an elk. We didn't jump anything. I thought for certain we'd be going through some of these north face benches or whatever, whether heading down to water or heading up to the mountain, that we would at least bump an elk. And we didn't. So I don't know. I don't know if they climb under rocks or where they go to hide, but they did a really good job of completely disappearing once they bedded down.
Yeah. Well, an elk, even though they look like a really big thing, they can hide really well.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about miles like that, Michael had his tracker, odometer, whatever on. The first day we did 9-point-something miles. And then the second day we did 12. And he's like, do you know we did 12 miles today? I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel that.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to tell him this. I'm like, oh, yeah, we gotta eat good. We got to be ready to go. There was no way I was doing more than 7 miles the next day.
Yeah.
So that was the day I took a heavy duty nap.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to average, 10 or whatever miles a day in the mountains for 6 days.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I've seen you try to do it for a few days, and you end up at camp with a pretty good hangover.
Yeah. When your body doesn't have the plumbing to get rid of lactic acid, you get pretty swollen and puffy and goofy, and so.
Yeah.
But the other part for me, I didn't want to confess this beforehand, but I had a lot of apprehension about my arm injury and everything, and I think there's a lot of people where elk hunting becomes a bit of a proving ground or a bit of a confidence maker. I really had some concerns with severing these 3 tendons in my right arm. How am I really going to be able to hunt hard for 6 days? And I was. So I chalked that up to a big victory.
Totally.
I wasn't able to do a lot of my workout stuff that I normally would do until later in the summer because they were worried about it. So I'm like, oh man, what's my cardio going to be like? It sucked, but I got through it. So every day was a ton of fun. It made me realize, even though I didn't even draw back in the whole 6 days. I had a blast. It made me realize how much I enjoy just being out there.
Yeah.
Every day you get up, you're a little tired, but you're like, today could be the day. Today's going to be the day. And I just, it's kind of my mental way of getting through the early alarm, or like, oh man, maybe I should just sleep in this morning and I'll hunt this afternoon. No, this could be the morning that they're turned on. This could be the morning where the wind is perfect, the setup is right, and you're going to get them.
Yep.
That enthusiasm part of it, that optimism part of it, it gets me really fired up.
Well, and it's hard to do. It's really easy to get discouraged. I think we talked about it in one of our last couple of episodes, but it's so easy to get discouraged. In fact, I fell victim to it in New Mexico, and I wasn't even hunting. I think part of it was I really thought that the elk would be rutting down there, and I know it's abnormal, but there were so many elk, and everything we had learned about this area was, they're ripping on the 1st of September. So getting there and not having that was frustrating. But then I'd also, bought this tag for Donnie as a thank you and as a gift. And now here it was with me. I felt like I needed to work extra hard to try to make something happen now. So I found myself a couple days into it getting pretty frustrated and really lacking that optimism and that enthusiasm to go and push. So, here I was not even hunting, and all I had to do was just carry a bugle around and find an elk to bugle, and I still was getting discouraged. So it was a good reminder of, gosh, you just got to enjoy it. Whether you're sitting at a water hole whittling a duck, or you're running straight up a mountain chasing elk that aren't responding, stop and look around. You aren't in an office somewhere. You're out hunting. There's just so much positive and good, and just remember, September is super short, and hunting season is short, and we're going to be missing it, craving it. So soak it in.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think when I was younger, I've struggled to find some of these points of optimism. And I could get down when a hunt was hard for a couple days. It'd be like, I'll come back next weekend, or whatever. And I just now I seek these little things that are going to make it exciting for me that day. It might be a grouse. It might be, a new place that I've never adventured to, trekked or discovered. I just find little, almost like hourly, or this morning, this is my goal. This is what's going to be fun this morning, or this is what's going to be fun this afternoon. So I had a blast. Some people be like, well, what do you mean? You didn't even really get that close to an elk. Right? What do you mean you had a blast? I did. I've driven through that terrain and for 30 years, saying some year I'm going to hunt this. And I went and did it. And there were a lot of people around. I mean, you Idaho guys, you take your elk hunting pretty seriously.
Yeah. And
these general units are, as a non-resident, it's a bit of a challenge to get the tag. Even though it's a quote unquote general tag.
Yeah.
And that could be discouraging, when you see a lot of other hunters that at times can get you down. But for me, it's just like, well, they're as excited to be out here as I am. I didn't see my name on the deed down there at the gate down the trailhead. Right.
Well, you did, but you also saw a big long list of everybody else's name too.
There's like 340 million names on that deed.
That's right.
I don't know. I hope I did a good job of staying happy and excited and enthused throughout the hunt, so that people, I don't think people watch my content to hear me moan and bellyache and woe is me and there's too many hunters and there's this or that. I'm kind of like a kid in a candy store every time I'm out hunting. So I had a blast. I learned so much. I mean, we talk about every day as a learning experience.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting here just being off the hunt for a day, questioning, well, why did you do that, Randy? That was so stupid. Why? Common sense says this is what you should have done, but I didn't. It's like, oh man, why does anyone listen to a podcast that I'm on when it comes to elk hunting? If that's the kind of mistakes I'm going to make. But
no, and I think that's mistakes. And it is frustrating because I make the same mistakes, every year it seems like. And I think I get better by the end of the season, and I'm making less mistakes, and I'm, it's more natural to do the right thing. But I'm like, how many years have we been doing this? And I still make that stupid mistake at the beginning of the season. It's like, I think that's part of it, is you've got to make mistakes, but the most important part is learning from it. And sometimes I think that's where I'm a little slow, is I don't seem to learn from the mistake as quickly, or as, getting out of that repetitive cycle of making it. But you're off for 11 months. And I go out there the first week of elk season. I don't care how many years it's been. I still feel rusty. I still feel like I'm not in that, what we call kill mode, where it's like, hey, it just comes natural. It's on, autopilot kill mode, where you just, you go there and do, and it happens. And it doesn't just come natural on day one each year.
No. Well, I almost wish that the first morning when we hiked in for an hour and a half, that I didn't get three bulls bugling back to me on my first calling session. Because then I was like, oh, I mean, you got you're hiking and you know, your mind's thinking this and thinking that, and you get to this spot, it's like, okay, this is where I think they're going to be. To that point, it's like, I should write a book about this, man. Look at this. I picked this spot on the map. I walk in there, and my first series of cow calls, I got bulls just bugling their head off. Man, I should. I'm gonna write books about this stuff. So you think about how exciting that is, right? It's like, yeah, man, I got to figure. You're doing a little fist pump to yourself, and you like smile at the camera, like, boy, I am such a damn good elk hunter. Look at this. Then you blow it.
Yeah, and then you come home with your tag still.
Yeah, and you know, it's like the highs and lows of it are. I think that's what makes the reward of it when you finally do have success.
Yeah,
is the amount of the high, low, the peaks, the valleys, the journey that takes to get there. Yeah. And yeah, it would have been great if I would have, you know, called one of those bulls in right away that morning and shot one of them. That would have been like, oh man, people are going to really think I know what I'm doing. But I wanted to dispel that myth. And by that afternoon, here's what I told the camera. I said, don't confuse luck with skill.
Yeah.
I got lucky. Like I showed up. The elk happened to be where I thought they might be.
They happened to bugle.
Yeah. So I think we can sometimes get ourselves thinking we're pretty darn skilled when maybe there was just more luck involved in that than there was skill. But oh well. Yeah. It was a ton of fun.
Very cool. No, and that's I love hunting middle of the day just because the elk aren't moving, and and that's what we've talked several times. That's the hardest part, is when the elk are on the move, they're going for a reason, and getting them to turn or to deviate can be difficult. But once they get to that bedding area, they're there for a reason, and they feel safe, and they aren't moving. And so I think the efficiency and the effectiveness of calling go way up when you're in that situation. And, we'd had a really rough week. We'd hunted 7 days without any real opportunities other than those little raghorn bulls. And when that bull bugled at 11:30 from across the canyon, I looked at Donnie and I said, that bull just made his last mistake. And it's that confidence that you can be beat up for 7 straight days, but when one thing happens and you're like, that's my bread and butter right there. When he made that noise, it was like, oh, I know what to do now. Up till that point, I didn't have a clue what to do to find elk, to get him to talk. But once we got one to talk and he talked from his bed, it boosted the confidence and made the hike over there a lot easier. Of course, then when the wind switches, then all that confidence goes out because you can't control any of that. And we got lucky that there was a draw separating us and kept our wind from going straight to the elk. But a lot of things have to come together and work out to be able to put a tag on an elk. Yeah.
Well, having followed you around the woods when you have a call, a bugle in your hand, a time or two, Michael and I were having this discussion about, is that, what's the right way to approach it? Should you go and bugle aggressively, or should you cow call and, maybe focus on hope that a younger bull comes in? Or I said, I don't. And for me, there's no right or wrong. It's like, if you want to be a real aggressive hunter, be a real aggressive hunter. If that's what works for you and that's where you find success and where you find a lot of excitement. Or if you find success by cow calling and being a little more passive and whatever, and you do multiple setups, hoping that you call one in with your cow calls, whatever works.
Yeah.
Whatever you find pleasure in doing, do that.
And to take it one step further, do both. Do all of it, because that's what it's going to take to be consistent, is not be consistent with the same thing, because the elk are looking for different things, different elk looking for different things on different days. And I think early season, I tend more to be less aggressive. We're leaving the end of this week to head out for week in Idaho hunting, and I plan on being pretty aggressive. I'm hoping the middle of the month, moon phase is perfect, temperatures are cooling down, elk are rutting. I'm gonna take advantage of that switch that they have that makes them want to fight, and if I can trip that, then it makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had some answers, Corey. I didn't. Now I came after 6 days with more questions than I have answers.
That's the end of every season. There's always a hunger there for the next season. That's for sure.
Yeah. But if you aren't having fun, the question would be, then why do it?
Yep.
So, as much as I might get frustrated because that elk drug me up that damn mountain, and he was laughing the whole. I don't think he's bugling. I think he's laughing at us, trying to catch up to him going up that mountain. We just thought he was bugling. You could get mad, get upset, get frustrated, but I look back at that. That was one of the funnest days. Because for the whole morning of the climb up there, I was convinced we were going to get that bull.
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right, man, you keep making that noise, I'm going to put an arrow in you. And then we get up there and the wind switches and he's still, 400 feet of vertical above us and we can't get to him now. And I don't know where he went.
No. Like you said, he's in Oregon.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could say that I was heading out on another elk hunt.
Are you not?
But I gotta go to Utah. I got a pronghorn tag. So this podcast is called Elk Talk, not Pronghorn Bleat or Pronghorn Snort or whatever.
So you going to Utah next?
Utah, and then I'm going to Kentucky. Yeah, I'm going to Kentucky
for elk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what do you got after
whenever
that?
we do then I'm going to the Yukon for mountain caribou.
Oh.
Then I'm doing Montana elk and Colorado elk and Arizona elk. So, whenever we do the sweepstakes, like right now, there's a win a hunt with Randy going on out at the rmef.org website. And last year's sweepstakes winner gets to go to Kentucky. Well, he called me. He's like, I don't really want to be filmed. Is that okay? I'm like, look, we tell every winner, if you want to be filmed, we'll bring a camera guy and film it. If you don't, we won't film it. No biggie to me. So
you're not going to be filmed?
No, we're not filming.
Oh. I have not seen a Kentucky elk hunt yet. I want to see one.
Yeah. So he said, no, I don't want to be filmed. And usually we tell people, look, you can't bring a whole entourage of folks along with, it just, so he's like, can I bring my brother? I'm like, heck yeah. Bring your brother, whatever. And so, I'm looking forward to it. I have no idea what to expect.
Yep.
Other than, this season is September 30th through October 4th. I expect that if there is a bull elk around, he's going to let the world know he's around. So that's my hope anyhow, Corey.
Very cool.
If I go there and don't get any bugling responses, I'm just going to throw my calls in the trash and take up golf or shuffleboard or something.
I doubt that. That'll be fun.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, well, you got a lot. You got a lot on your plate over the next couple months.
Mm-hmm. Not like you're going to be sitting around just cutting out paper dolls or something.
Carving wood ducks, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
No, we've got our week in Idaho with John and Donnie and I. And then come back from that. I'm going to hunt with my daughter for a few days. She'll come home from college, and then I think we talked last episode, Isaac, my son, drew a pretty good archery tag here in Idaho in the leftover draw. So we'll go down and hunt that, and then we go straight from that to our Outfitters for Hope hunt. And then rifle season opens on the 15th and runs through November 3rd. We'll probably wait until closer to the end of the hunt, but Donnie and I got second tags here in Idaho for the rifle hunt here. So
cool.
And then basketball starts. Yep.
Well, if people wonder why there might be a gap in an episode, it's because you and I are like ships passing in the night. Just
exactly. I think we've been doing pretty good keeping up on things here.
I am impressed, Corey. Yeah. I think you and I deserve some sort of like Scooby snack or something.
That's right.
For as good as we've done keeping up with it.
I think we deserve a medium blizzard.
Okay.
No.
Chocolate extreme with that chocolate ice cream for me.
Oh, not me. I like the Royal New York cheesecake is a good one. They've got snickerdoodle cookie dough or snickerdoodle cookie or something right now. I haven't tried it.
I've never been a big fan of the cookie dough one.
Yeah. I like the cookie dough and the cheesecakes.
And if I go down there and say, hey, you guys got some raspberries to throw in there? They're like, for you, yeah, we got some raspberries to throw in there. I'm like, yeah.
You can ask them to do that?
Well, you kind of got to, be a regular, Corey. You can't just be a occasional show up once in a while and think anyone cares about your order.
Nobody cares. So. Yeah. I did get one last week, and I was a little disappointed. I've never had a bad blizzard, but this one was runny. In fact,
really,
never seen it happen. But you know how when you're at the drive-through and they bring it out to you and they tip it upside down?
Tip it upside down?
Yeah. He tipped it upside down, and it ran out. Like some ran out. It didn't all fall out, but some ran out. And he tipped it back over, and we both kind of stared at each other for a minute, like, now what? And he just...
I'd say, you know what? I'm calling Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, he's a big Dairy Queen fan. He ain't going to put up with this stuff. The Berkshire Hathaway fund that owns a lot of you Dairy Queen operations, we can't be having a drainage problem.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there used to be the rumor that if it fell out or something, you got a free one or whatever. And I think me and the kid that handed it to me were both kind of confused as to what was supposed to happen next. But he just handed it to me and said, "Have a good day."
Yeah. See you later.
Yeah.
Back to an elk hunting question though. Saturday and Sunday, the last 2 days of the hunt, it was like the bugling activity picked up overnight.
Yep.
And I'm trying to figure out, did I just end up in a different situation, better scenario, better, the bulls just moved in here, they've been here, and they just weren't bugling, and now they are. Have you ever had that feel like someone just turned on a switch?
Totally. Yeah, and it happens. Okay. And I think you'll always find an elk that'll bugle. There's always going to be that. But there is absolutely a switch, and I don't know if it's cooler weather, if it's a weather front coming in, what it is, if it's a cow coming in, but it really seems like there is a 3-day period every year where it goes from, man, the bugling action is just super slow to, wow, look where we were 3 days ago to where it is now. We're hearing multiple bulls. So yeah, I don't know. I think any of those factors can help turn it on, but when they're ready to rut, they're ready to rut.
Yeah. Well, an unfortunate part that happened here in Montana, getting back to grizzly bears, is the second to last day of our hunt, over on the Montana side, just south of Big Sky. The guy got mauled really bad. He wasn't even a hunter. He's a guy who owns a business that rents ATVs, I think. And he got a call, hey, we got a deer we hit here, come help us look for it. So he thought, yeah, sure, I'll come help you look. So according to the story, that there's a GoFundMe out there. His daughter wrote the story of what had happened. It's the most gruesome story I think I've ever read. He's still alive, and so this tall, aggressive bear was on him. Rudy aimed his gun at the bear, but the firearm misfired, making his best choice of defense his fist, as he did not have any time to get his bear spray from his backpack. As the bear lunged, the only thing Rudy could do was punch the bear in hopes of slowing it down. Unfortunately, it did not, and after the first punch, the grizzly was on top of Rudy. The grizzly left a large scratch down its right chest, bit his arms, legs, and to top it all off, gave him, as Rudy describes, the most disgusting French kiss of his life before biting down and tearing off Rudy's lower jaw.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So they helicoptered him out of there to Bozeman, and then they patched him up enough that they air flighted him to Salt Lake City. So
wow.
In the interim, what happened is the guys who were actually the hunters, from what the rest of her story sounds like, they heard the commotion going on, and they came over there, and one of them did fire a shot and hit the bear, and the bear ran off. So now that part of our forest is closed because they're like, hey, we got a big old boar, wounded bear around here somewhere. So feel bad for that guy.
No kidding.
I can't even imagine a bear grabbing my lower jaw and doing that.
No.
And to survive it.
Can you imagine punching a grizzly bear though, as big as, and especially their heads? It would be so ineffective. Like, you just feel helpless. Even with a gun, you feel underpowered against a grizzly,
Yeah. And I guess, if there is a moral to that story is, if you carry a firearm, great. Or if you carry bear spray, don't have it in your backpack.
Yeah.
Not saying that the bear spray could have, maybe there would have been a similar outcome, but, it's hard to get it out of your backpack. At that point, it's just like, may as well have a rock in your backpack.
Yep. Something you know about.
So, yeah.
But no, that's just it. If you get attacked by a grizzly, you're never going to have enough time to open your backpack and pull out the bear spray. So if you're truly worried about being attacked by a grizzly, make sure that it's accessible, that you know how to open it, because in that heat of the moment, it's literally a matter of seconds. And if you're fumbling around trying to remember how to, unbutton the strap that's holding it down or whatever, and then how to pull the little plug off the top and depress the lever, make sure you've gone through it and you know how to use it, so that in those situations it can come at least somewhat second nature.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just before season opened over here south of Livingston in Tom Minor Basin, two guys were fishing in a little mountain creek, and a bear charged them, and they had to shoot it. They killed the bear. So I'm looking at the number of grizzly bear attacks we've already had,
and we haven't even got into the peak season, like the gut pile season.
Right. And then, you think about Wyoming opening up some of their backcountry units to elk huntings late, mid to late September. That's when the Wyoming guys really started having a lot of bear conflicts. I have no idea how many bears, the conflicts and encounters we're going to hear about this year. For it to only be September
12th today.
Yeah. And to have as many as we've had is like, whew. Someone asked me, is it because there's that many bears? And it is, we've got way more bears than we ever did around here. But we also have so many people in the backcountry and out in the hills compared to what it used to be 20 years ago.
Yep.
And just the number of people recreating, hiking, fishing, hunting, living here, down in Ashton, Idaho, just last week, they had to shoot 2 grizzly bears, 1.5 years old, recently booted out cubs, because they were in it sounded like a subdivision outside of Ashton, Idaho, right at the bottom of the hill. They'd become conditioned to human food, and they couldn't discourage them, so they, quote unquote, dispatched them, shot them. So it's I don't know where the long-term solution is going on this.
Well, it's like anything; they've got to be managed. That's the only real solution. You look at Alaska. You go up to Alaska, and it's not uncommon to see 20 grizzly bears in a week of hunting up there. But you don't have very many interactions with them because they've learned to, stay away, keep their distance. And these bears down here, they're the apex predator because they have there's no consequence for them for anything they do. And so they just haven't learned through that management that, hey, I need to keep my distance here because I'm not there could be consequences for me. I don't get to just go and chase somebody and chew on them and walk away. And
that's, and you look at the history of that. Twice now, the federal government has delisted the grizzly bears in the greater Yellowstone region. And both times, the courts have overturned that. Yeah. It's like the federal game managers are like, we have enough of these things. We don't have places to put any more of them. Please hand them over to the state.
Yep. Let them manage them.
Yeah. And so a lot of times you hear, the damn feds, the this or that. Well, not in the case of grizzly bears.
Yeah.
They have said, here, we're tired of these things. You guys take care of them. There's more than enough of them to go around.
Yep.
But it gets litigated. They go find a judge or a circuit court that, federal district court that is sympathetic towards whatever, argument is made. And that's where we find ourselves as far as delisting of grizzly bears. And we just don't have room for any more of them. It's not like grizzly bears can live in high density housing.
Yeah. When the elk are overpopulated, you're just, they're doing more damage to fields, but there's still 1,000 of them out there in that field hanging out together. When the grizzlies are overpopulated, there's 2 cubs living in the outskirts of a subdivision eating out of dumpsters because that's the only place left for them to go.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's, this has been an eye opener for me. The one lady got killed. This guy got mauled severely bad. The 2 hunters at Island Park Reservoir, if they weren't good with their handguns, who knows what that outcome would have been.
Yeah.
The same bear that killed the lady that crawled into the kitchen there. I just, that's how conditioned they're getting.
Yep.
And
it amazes me that, we're talking about people saying, the feds, they should let us hunt them. And that misunderstanding of, it goes back to, the Fish and Game this, or, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, people are quick to assign blame. And man, it's usually not assigned in the right place. I ran into a guy last week that was talking. He had just started hunting not very long ago, and we were talking and sharing some stories, and he said, well, I just get tired of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation publishing, all of their statistics and their counts from all the states. They go and count all the elk in all these states, and they're all saying that they're overpopulated and there's plenty of elk, but they don't take into consideration that they're all on private land. I'm like, hold on. Who's doing the counting here? You're mad at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation? Like, no, that's up to each state. Well, then in the same conversation, he said, well, and then you look at Montana, and their Fish and Game agency must not be very interested in money because they could easily auction off a couple governor tags for grizzly bears and make all sorts of money. And I'm like, well, they're a federally protected animal, so the Fish and Game in the state doesn't have that. But I mean, I hear so many arguments like that people are quick to blame somebody and not understand the full scope of the story. And when you understand the full scope of it, I think it empowers us to become more involved. And
channel our energy into a place where it's going to make progress.
Yep.
So. Yeah.
Instead of blaming somebody like the Elk Foundation or the agencies, they're on our side. They're our teammate. And when we spend all of our time focusing that blame on them, then we're just really cutting off the hand that feeds us.
Well, I think there's a bit of the American perspective anymore that don't let the facts get in the way of me being mad.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but back to the grizzly thing. I don't want to dwell on it. I don't want to cause people to not hunt in grizzly country. But there are some things you should be thinking about, things you should do. I violated some of those general protocols last week when I got all excited and I chased that elk through some places that have a greater risk of grizzly bears being in that location at this time of year than some of the other places. And, I consider myself lucky. Okay, I let enthusiasm get the best of me. And I didn't have a bad outcome like some of these other ones we talk about. But it's a reality we're going to have to deal with until, a court somehow just rejects these arguments and says, yes, we're going to let the states have control over them. Some of our best elk hunting in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming is in grizzly country. So I get it if people check that off the list and say, nope, I don't sleep well when I'm in grizzly country. I don't have any fun when I'm in grizzly country. I get all that. And if that's the case, don't hunt grizzly country. And you can't have a discussion about elk hunting in some of the premium areas of the Northern Rockies without having some sidebar discussion about grizzly bears.
Totally.
So,
yep.
I'm done talking about grizzly bears, Corey. I want to hear stories about all these Idaho elk hunts.
That's
when you
right.
Get done.
Yeah.
And I want to give you a story about a Kentucky elk hunt.
I can't wait. What are the dates for that? That's October?
September 30th through October 4th.
Yeah.
They do 5-day seasons down there. So, got to get it done.
Very cool.
So,
well, have fun.
I'm going to let
safe.
You go.
Yeah.
We've kept the audience for an hour and 45 minutes.
Whew.
I'm sure we've completely bored them. Half of them have probably turned off the radio by now.
By now, maybe, but the first half was entertaining at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hearing about all my stumbles and fumbles.
That's right. Yeah.
But
well, the good news is Donnie survived New Mexico, didn't break a knee or have any episodes with kidney stones or anything like that. So we're off to a good start here.
Oh, he's in one piece.
He's in one piece, yeah. And he's got a week here to recover, so it should be should be great.
All right, keep him in one piece by the time it's all done, Corey.
I plan on it.
and next time you're gonna do something like that, I'm a bad liar, man. Don't. I apologize to Donnie right now and here. Like, Donnie, I'm sorry, man. I'm not very good at keeping a storyline going. So
no, people are probably like, I didn't even know they were going to New Mexico, and we kept it pretty hush hush, just knowing the more people that knew, the harder it'd be to keep a surprise from Donnie. So
yeah, he's a great guy.
He is.
I'm glad you did that for him. I'm glad he got a bull, and I look forward to the rest of your hunting stories this year.
Likewise. We'll catch up again here when our stars align.
All right. Good luck, Corey.
You too.